Hi, Mr. Hogan's class. This is Jonathan. I'm here to answer some questions that Mr. Hogan emailed me that you guys shared with him to share with me about physics, college, and a bunch of other topics. So I have all of the questions queued up on my laptop. Without further ado, let's begin. Why did he pick this career path? I think you'll find a lot of things in life don't necessarily all because you picked them, but more that they chose you or it was the only option available to you. Right now, I'm at Purdue, not so much that I wanted to come to Purdue, but when I was at my my original graduate program at the University of Iowa, I really disliked the environment there, and just my goal was to leave as soon as possible. So I did not complete my PhD. I got about halfway there. I did a master's thesis defense, so a comprehensive exam as they call it, finished with my master's degree, and then applied to a bunch of places to see if I could complete my doctorate. Purdue I applied to because one of my friends from undergrad happened to be here and was now doing his doctorate in mechanical engineering. But regardless, so I didn't get into any of the programs I wanted, so I came here. Then I was not able to get into any of the research groups I wanted, so because I had nothing else on my plate, I started working more or less with the outreach director, Dave Cederberg, very closely to more or less be the assistant with him on a lot of the YouTube projects or other in-person projects that help organize and facilitate outreach activities. And also because of my lack of a research group here, I needed to find other ways for income, and because I have my master's degree, I knew I could apply to teach at community colleges, so I did that, got a position at a local community college, and this is kind of where I'm at, not by choice, but more by necessity. And you'll find that after college, you get your undergraduate degree, you're going to apply to a bunch of jobs, a bunch of grad schools, and a bunch of internships, and you will have backup plans, and unfortunately, sometimes your backup plans are the only ones that accept you. You make the best of the circumstance. Here, currently we do research at Purdue, so I've been doing a lot more outreach, engagement, creative writing, video development that I would not get to do if I was able to be a more traditional physicist like I originally planned. Did he have idea of what he wanted to do when he was younger and it failed? Or did he always want to do something with physics? I will say originally what I wanted to be, at least through most of middle school and the start of high school, I wanted to be a science fiction author. I wanted to write novels, maybe even do science fiction screenwriting. Really loved reading and really loved science. I did not think physics and science was really a career path, but there were definitely a bunch of TV shows, movies, and books where people talk about science, and I wanted to write stuff like that. I was always penning short stories, and I was even in the yearbook in middle school. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, my freshman year English teacher at Oak Forest made me despise the subject of English and literature. However, I really loved Mr. Hogan's physics class, so I gradually switched to wanting to be a science fiction author to wanting to be a physicist. The TV show, The Big Bang Theory, which was really huge when I was in middle school and high school and even in undergrad, ran for 12 years. It's about physicists. And that show, I kind of discovered it around my freshman or sophomore year of high school, and that gave me the inkling that people could major in physics and have a career in that. If it wasn't for the Big Bang Theory and Mr. Hogan's class, I don't know if I would have known physics was something you could major in and have a career in. I did not really rediscover my love or interest in reading and writing to my junior year at Oak Forest, where I took AP English with Mr. Farrell, and from there I got involved in the school paper. I was actually the editor-in-chief of the paper again, and found that I still like writing and doing research when I was in a class that was supportive with a teacher who was very inspiring and supportive. So there was a chance if I had Mr. Farrell my freshman year and not Mr. Hogan my freshman year that I would have majored in journalism or English instead of physics. Teachers have a huge impact on what you like or dislike from my experience. Is there anything he regrets about his choices for college? When it comes to Illinois State and my undergrad, no. ISU Physics is a wonderful place. It's the best program for me. I got to work with the department chair, Dr. Dan Howland. Wonderful man, scientist, advisor, father figure. I love everything about the ISU Physics department practically. And so far, if I could live in any of the towns I've lived in since undergrad, so I've lived Illinois State, I've been at Iowa, Purdue, any other places I've visited, I would still move back to Bloomington, Normal. Do I regret applying to some of my graduate schools? Yeah, I wish I didn't apply to Purdue, and I wish I did not apply to Iowa. But when I came to undergrad, Illinois State, great college, great program for physics. I can't speak about its other programs, but for me and my physics career, it was excellent. What is the favorite thing you have learned in physics? Physics I find most exciting tends to be theoretical or mathematical physics, and particularly a field I really like is quantum field theory. So you've heard of quantum mechanics, so kind of my blog at what quantum field theory is quantum mechanics told us things that we thought were particles behave like waves. Quantum field theory is below quantum mechanics, where we say these particle wave things come from these invisible fields, which are just oscillations vibrating throughout all of space. Quantum field theory is really interesting because it's describing how space itself behaves. When you get as close to possible to empty space, it's still not empty because these fields vibrate everywhere and they interact, and giving a field more energy can make a new particle pop into existence. It's really exciting stuff, just how the universe itself behaves at the smallest of scales. In this really small vibrations, it might be low energy, but when you look at the small vibrations and consider how much space there is, how big the universe is, and how much the universe can expand, well, the whole expansion of the universe, dark energy, comes from these invisible quantum fields that permeate all of space. It's where my master's research comes from, and it's quite exciting. What is your advice for someone pursuing a career in physics? I'll come to Purdue, that'd be my first thing. If you want to pursue a career in physics while you're in high school, I would say the important thing is take advantage of the opportunities you have in the high school while you can to get math and science, particularly physics education. Take all of the math classes you can take and take all of the physics classes you can take. While you're in high school, particularly with Mr. Hogan, he is great. The quality of your education and the hands-on labs and all of the worksheets he personalizes and completes is a much better learning experience than you'll have almost anywhere, and especially at colleges. Only having class of about 20 to 30-ish kids in your classroom, you see Mr. Hogan every day. He knows all of you. He can help you individually. You're going to have more time to learn the material than when you go to college, where classes are now half a year, so classes are a semester. So AP Physics 1 or C or 2 or even AP Calculus, you take that over a whole year seeing your teacher every single day of the week. In college, you will take those AP classes or the equivalent of a semester-long class that only meets for half the school year and maybe only 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes 4. But those classes, depending where you go, could have up to 250 students. There, the professors don't get to learn your name. You don't get the same one-on-one help you could get at a high school. And because of that, I really recommend trying to take the AP classes while you can at high school so you can have a very, very solid grasp on the freshman year college classes before you go to college. Learning calculus over a year is much easier than learning Calc 1 over a semester. You'll have a much better solid footing, and even if you need to retake the class in college, you're going to be more prepared ahead of your colleagues. And then if you want a major in physics, or anything, this is just in general, visit the visit the colleges, see what the college environment is like, and see what the department environment is like. You might really like a college town. The college might be really well known for something, but the department itself that's giving you the classes, the quality of departments can vary drastically within the same college. A place that might be great for engineering might be terrible for physics and vice versa. Find the college, see if you can talk to the professors. If the people in the department aren't willing to really meet with you one-on-one, or you just meet people who aren't the full-time professors, you just meet staff members, that tends to be a message that department won't really care much about the undergrads. But like when I wanted to visit University of Illinois when I was in high school, which was originally my number one chance, I could not meet anyone in physics. Yes, I was able to meet with representatives from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences or engineering, but it was never someone from physics specifically I got to meet with. When I visited ISU, every visit, I got to talk to multiple full-time professors, and the chair, Dr. Holland, would show up and meet everyone. That they really care. I recommend finding a place that is great for undergrads, that has class sizes that are similar to your class sizes in high school, where the professors can really know you. I've taught physics labs at ISU. I tutored physics there too in the tutoring center. I have taught physics labs and recitations at the University of Iowa. I've taught physics recitations at Purdue. I teach lectures now at Ivy Tech, the community college I'm an adjunct professor at. Of all of the students I've talked to and met and have worked with, the ISU physics majors are the most well prepared to go on to do physics. But here at Purdue, for instance, there's so many gaps in their education, and there's just so many physics majors here that a lot of them can get passed along without having a solid footing, and it's really sad when you think about it. So if you find a place where the people care and are willing to meet with you, a department when you're in high school, so when you go to college, you already know some of the faculty and you know they care. The class, if you're in small classes, you'll get to build relationships with professors. You can't do that at colleges where, like Purdue, there's 100 people plus in the freshman physics classes. Teachers have a big impact on your success and your enjoyment. Find a department that you can visit, a department that is relatively small such that it can be more like a family and supportive. You go to a place that's huge, where classes are huge, you're just going to be a number. And all of the colleges will tell you, no, you do matter, but that's really just marketing. There's some places where they just know they have big numbers, so they don't care if they lose some people. If you go to the smaller places that are focused on teaching, they're usually called R2 colleges. Like Purdue and Iowa, Illinois, they're R1 colleges. Research is their priority. R2 colleges are like Illinois State University or some of the smaller schools where they put more emphasis on teaching. And while you're undergrad, you want to go somewhere where you can learn to be the best you can at your subject. The school might not have the best research being done, but that's because the people there, they're more focused on making sure you understand things. And then when you go to your career or grad school, you have a much better footing on things you should understand and are more prepared than otherwise. Find your field of interest, your ISU physics department. Find what that can be for you. A supportive environment where you know you matter, where the professors care, and you can know everyone really well, not your big schools. What type of advice do you have for students who are interested in pursuing a career in physics? Well, I said most of what I had to say. Go to a department that is relatively small so that you can know everyone and you can where they care about teaching and your success, where you're not just a number. Take the AP classes you can while you're in high school, because you won't get that opportunity to have such a one-on-one education over a whole year instead of college where everything's more compressed. Emailing doesn't cost you anything. If you're interested in something, you can email me. You could even try emailing. I would recommend you email professors or scientists at colleges or labs or whatnot. Just say you're a high school student, you're really interested in this, so you've looked at a page, their research page, and you have questions. Or is there a way you can meet? The places that respond to that and give you a personal touch, those are the places you want to go. You just get a form or they forward you along to someone else, and that's usually a signal that maybe that's not where you want to go. Reaching out to people doesn't cost you anything, and you should never be afraid to send an email. You share an example of one of the real problems physicists are trying to uncover. I'm going to interpret that as one of the problems that is more applicable to everyday life or has more direct. Well, there's a lot of the physics problems are real, but right now you want to make things that are more efficient, so solar technology is big or renewable energy is big. How can you make that technology even more efficient so we can get more energy out of them and not have to build as much? Because right now solar panels are not particularly efficient. A lot of the energy gets wasted. Speaking of solar, there's some physicists who are trying to understand photosynthesis, the process plants use to make energy from light on the quantum mechanical level, so that they could replicate photosynthesis artificially, because that's way more efficient than solar panels are. Plants are particularly good. Can you build synthetic proteins just like nature does? That has a lot of physics and chemistry in it. It's not just biology. Even when it comes to technology, the issue for a while, computers just kept getting smaller, circuitry kept getting smaller, but the issue now is if you get wires too close to each other, quantum mechanics kicks in. Electrons or things can interfere or jump between wiring. So how's the way you can have a better control over the electrons and particles inside the solid for conductors and for semiconductors and for making electronics, such that you can control technology better and make smaller or more compact circuits? That's another thing. Then you have academic scholarships. And so how does the scholarship process work? Yes, I got academic scholarships. How they usually work at colleges, when you apply to a college, if you meet some minimum GPA requirement at ACT or SAT score, what have you, you'll get offered to apply for honor scholarships or presidential scholarships, where you write an essay about what you want to do, why you want to do it, why you want to go to that college, and what you're passionate about. What is your career goal? For instance, Illinois State, their highest scholarship is called Presidential Scholarship. I believe the minimum ACT score was a 30 when I was there, and I don't remember the GPA, but I qualified for it, so I was asked to apply. So I write essays. I ask people like Mr. Hogan or other teachers I was close to, Mr. Farrell, to write letters of recommendation. And the college looks at the best applicants, and then you get invited to interview. And then you meet people from the college where you have to go through an interview and talk one-on-one with someone about your goals, and then they kind of evaluate you on your answers. Mr. Farrell was very helpful. He let me do mock interviews with him almost every week leading up to that for a couple months. So I just practiced interviewing and answering questions. Unfortunately, I didn't get the full presidential scholarship, but I did good enough that I got a partial scholarship based off of it. So instead of the full presidential scholarship was $11,000 a year, what I got was $7,000 a year, which is more than half of $11,000. So I could have done too bad. How do you balance it all? Were you ever scared or intimidated to start your career? Well, to balance things, I had a lot of practice in high school, because in high school, by my senior year, I was in 7 classes, but both junior year AP Bio was 2 hours and AP Chem was 2 hours my senior year. So I was in 8 class periods without a lunch or study hall. And I was on the tennis team. I was the editor of the school newspaper. In Scholasticball, I was in chess. Was in Mathletes for a while. I didn't do that my senior year. But in high school, I really had practice balancing things. And usually, when it comes to balancing anything, you have to have priorities. So obviously, something that's due or has to be done tomorrow, for me, that is my priority. I need to get that thing that's due tomorrow done. And then I kind of make a list. If something's not due or doesn't have to be done until next week, that doesn't rank as high as things that have to be done this week. And then it's just personal preference. For me, classwork was first, and then research. And then if I had time for research, then anything my job was. So I would hire as a tutor or TA, the teaching, what I'm actually being paid to do. If you're being paid to do something, you better make sure you never get behind on that. So that's one, but I was here to take classes. But in grad school, I suppose you could say that eventually my TA job will be the main priority, because I couldn't get behind on that. That's what I'm paid to do. And then classwork. So then if I had no classwork, research, or teaching, other things then enter the list, like outreach. And then if there's no outreach I can do, then I can do my more creative hobbies, video production, and making my own scripts and films. But it's usually making a list of due dates and prioritizing when things are due. I come to the office to work. Some people work in their apartment, but I find working in the office is good. I also will recommend not sacrificing a full night of sleep for anything. If you don't get enough sleep, you're not going to be efficient. And if what you're doing requires you to not be able to sleep, then you're doing too much. So I always try to be done by 9 or 10. Yes, sometimes I will have a big thing I will want to finish and maybe not go to bed till 11-ish. But if I ever got to a point where I could not find time to sleep or eat, that meant I had to cut things out. So practice in high school is good, but then making priority list and then making sure you stay well rested. But so I ever intimidate it? Well, I will say the most I felt intimidated was originally I got to ISU and I wanted to do physics, but I was kind of avoiding math because, being in Mathletes really ruined my self-confidence in math, because even though I was graduated and got a 5 in AP Calc BC, so I could enter ISU into Calc 3, good at math, right? Sounds like it. But because of Mathletes, by my senior year, with how competitive that was, I was convinced that I was terrible at math. So, when I was at ISU, I thought I would avoid all of the math classes, and reading these names of these complicated sounding math classes or electives, that really scared me. However, you're doing physics or science, you need to know math, and also you need to realize that you're never going to be the best at anything, and perhaps making math competitive wasn't the best, particularly for me because I write slow, or sometimes I need to think more clearly and slowly, so doing math under pressure in these 10-minute exams and mathletes where I'm competing against other people who are much, much more competitive than I, really just set my self-esteem when it came to my mathematics abilities basically to the ground by the time I started at ISU. So I was intimidated, but one of my sister, who is a high school math teacher, commented to me when I talked about how scary all of the math classes said. She more or less said, of course they sound scary. The topics are things you've never heard of or known about before. Everyone's going to feel like that. And that's true. If you don't know something and you hear new vocabulary, it's going to sound like, oh, I can't do that, but you don't know until you try. And eventually, Dr. Christensen, another professor I really enjoyed at ISU, he more or less was really big on you have to take math classes in undergrad and will encourage people to take extra math classes if they want to go to grad school in physics, because in addition to physics, you use a lot of math. If you already know extra math, by the time you go to grad school, you'll be even more prepared. At Iowa for my first graduate degree, I again was a bit intimidated because I got into Iowa in 2020. So COVID kind of happened during my senior year, my last year at ISU. So I was very scared that I'll move to this town that I've never really been to before. Iowa was not my first choice for grad school, and that I would like it there. So I was scared of that, but I went there, tried to give it a fair shake, and I absolutely disliked it there. Not necessarily for the reasons I was scared of. It was a toxic environment, to say the least. But yeah, so there's been times I've been intimidated. Usually it's about the unknown. But the thing about life is there's always going to be unknowns, and you're always going to need to just learn how to stay on your feet and cope with not knowing things, because you can't know them until you learn them or you experience them, and until you do that, it's going to be unknown. That's the last question. I suppose one thing I should have added about regrets about college or advice. So I absolutely loved ISU, and one thing I want to add in, I took enough AP classes that I entered Illinois State as a sophomore. So I didn't need to take the freshman physics classes, I didn't need to take the freshman math classes, I was thrown into the sophomore year. So that was a bit intimidating because I didn't know anyone yet, and all of the sophomores more or less were already friends. That I don't regret. I think it was good that I took those classes in high school, and that I was just as prepared, if not more so, than the people who took it in college, because again, I got a whole year to learn the material and practice it in the high school class versus having to do it much faster over a semester or so in college. Because of that, I graduated a year early. I think I may have been better off if I stayed for 4 years, and my last year I just took electives, so took it somewhat slower and had a bit more time to do research with my advisor or try things that last year, or take a couple more math or physics classes, or instead of taking 18 credit hours every semester or so, take one less class, and even if I was still, and just kind of had an extra year to be a senior, even though I did all my senior classes my third year. If maybe I stretched that over 2 years, that may have been better. Maybe I could have done more research, and maybe that would have helped me get into different grad programs. But playing the what if game is unproductive. I would say I do not regret finishing in 3 years, because my 4th year would have been COVID, and all of my classes would have been online at ISU, so that would have been productive. At least at Iowa, I had in-person classes every year. But I do wonder, if not for COVID, if it would have been an extra advantage to not graduate a year early and have taken a couple more classes at ISU and take more advantage of that supportive environment and learn even more stuff while I could there before then going into grad school. Again, it's the what if game. Maybe I should have just applied to more grad programs. My advisor had recommended applying to 6 grad schools. Here at Purdue or other people I met at Iowa, I mean people who apply to like 12 or 14. So they get into maybe a couple more, or they still only get in one. Considering every time I applied to 6, I got into 1 or 2 grad schools. Maybe if I doubled that, I would have had a couple other options. I don't know. Perhaps not trying to take things fast will have been slightly better, but I do not regret going to ISU at all. And again, find the program that could be like ISU for you as ISU's physics department was for me. That is my advice and answers. Let me know if you have any other questions.